Hello and welcome to East Coast in Focus, the fourth season of Lights Camera Inclusion, a video series by the Canada Media Fund. This season takes us to beautiful Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, where producers and filmmakers are shaping powerful stories from the Atlantic provinces. Voices that often go underrepresented on the national stage. From Halifax to Moncton, we'll explore the realities of building a career away from Canada's largest screen industry hubs and what makes regional perspectives so vital. We'll also highlight the role of key festivals, like the Atlantic International Film Festival in Halifax, the Lunenburg Doc Fest, and FICFA in Moncton. Platforms that connect local stories with national and international audiences. So, what does it take to create authentic stories that are rooted here but still travel far and wide? Join me as we find out, along with some very inspiring voices from the East Coast. For our third episode, we're in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, a UNESCO World Heritage town whose colorful waterfront sets the stage for one of the region's most engaging screen events, the Lunenburg Doc Fest. Each year, the festival brings together filmmakers, producers, and audiences to celebrate documentary storytelling. Over several days, the program combines public screenings with professional development opportunities that connect Atlantic creators to the wider industry. At the heart of it all is Walter Forsyth, the festival's executive director, who told us about the festival's goals and how it continues to strengthen the documentary community in the region. The Lunenburg Doc Fest is in its 12th edition this year. Could you tell me a little bit about the early days, how it came about, why Lunenburg, and why the focus on documentaries?
So the founders of the festival, the founding member, I was teaching a workshop on how to break into the film industry. It was an early workshop for emerging filmmakers. She was there, and after the festival, she came out and said, "We're going to start a film festival in Lunenburg." And I was like, "That's cool." This is 12 years ago. So I said, "If you have any questions, let me know. I've been involved and run a lot of festivals." Her name's Pamela. She kept in touch, and then they were in the black after the first year. They made some money, so they hired me. I said, "You need a strat plan." So they, got organized, and that was 12 years ago. She ran the festival for 11 years. She died of cancer last year, and then I've taken over this year. So it's been 12 years of growing. The idea for a documentary film festival, I think they just wanted to make something unique, something different. It's a little town. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think they thought, let's make something that will bring people, that we can celebrate, people can talk, get educated, get people talking.
And it seems that people here are really involved with the festival. How does it bring some vitality to this town?
So the idea was, okay, this is a tourist town. Let's take advantage of the tourists that are here and the locals really seem to have embraced it, which is really great. It is really nice to see all the people when they show up, they're hugging everyone else. They know each other and they're in the lineup. It is moving to see people who come out and they live in a community, and to feel that community for these 5 days. It's our little community. It's really sweet.
LDF also has a very important industry aspect, right? Because you do support filmmakers with, networking, events, panels, and all of that. What do you feel and you're one yourself, what do you feel are the specific needs of documentary filmmakers in this region of the country?
One of the things that we wanted to do when we started the festival was to create an industry conference alongside the presentation of films. Many of the people that come see these films do not know that there's a lot of people that come from across Canada and even around the world to participate in a 3-day conference. But it is really important. It helps us get the filmmakers here because they want to come and meet other filmmakers and learn and engage, and then they're here for their film, so that's really great. It's important for the Atlantic Canadian filmmakers to gather because it's a diverse, spread out region. it's important that they learn and kind of get encouraged and get the opportunity to pitch and do those things that happen at those events, and even just improve their applications for funders, improve their ability to talk to decision makers or broadcasters. All of that, a region like this or the North or the West, they all need to be able to get together more, learn more, and build confidence and their skill level, so that they can compete with the people in Montreal and Toronto, right? We used to say it was $1,000 coffee to have to go and have a meeting with these decision makers. It's not the same now because of online, but it's still kind of true. It's about who you know. People work with who they know. So it is really important for the Atlantic region to have those filmmakers gather and learn and have the confidence to go forward and make their films.
And you have great programs as well for emerging filmmakers from all of the Atlantic provinces, and also filmmakers from diverse backgrounds. What's the philosophy behind it?
So what we decided to do was to create some programs for emerging, marginalized communities mostly. And we have 3 of those right now. We have the Breakthrough program that we deliver for the Documentary Organization of Canada, which allows, right now we have 6 artists that are chosen from Atlantic Canada, and they will participate in this festival, and then they'll go on to Hot Docs, and they'll learn to, through a mentorship, they learn to work on their projects and be able to hopefully get further along with their projects. We also have the CISF Connects program, which is really for engaging community leaders in how to use film to better engage their audiences. And so that group just went to TIFF. They're here. They're going to come here, and it's about talking and learning how to use film. How do you do a Q&A? How do you get an artist to, get online and do something and talk to the audience, if you can't fly them in? That's that program, which is great. It's a pilot program. And the other one is The Launch, which is in its 4th year, like Breakthrough. The Launch is a program which is a live pitch program. 5 people are chosen from Atlantic Canada, emerging, marginalized, diverse artists, and they're going to get up on stage, pitch to the live audience with a jury, and then the jury will select 3 winners, and there's over $20,000 in cash and services that they get, and they'll make a short film. The winner from last year of The Launch will premiere their film at that event this year. So it's a nice circular
circle
thing. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This year's festival hosted the 4th edition of the Doc Atlantic Breakthrough Program, a 10-month professional development initiative for 6 emerging BIPOC filmmakers from the East Coast. Over the week, participants connected with mentors, attended industry events, and shared their works in progress.
So the Breakthrough program actually started in the DOC Ontario chapter 25 years ago. And I'm really happy to say that I sort of initiated the program there. So the idea was to take a group of people who've never had exposure to festivals when they go and they want to pitch a project, kind of project preparation, that you prepare them to be able to pitch their projects. But in the course of a few months, they get to hone their projects. So you work with a main lead mentor, but then we also bring in a number of other people to give tips and advice so that the cohort are better prepared when they go in to make their presentations. And also, just meeting people, everybody wants to know, like, what are you here for? And then you can talk to them a little bit more easily about your project.
Hailing from all 4 Atlantic provinces, this year's Breakthrough program participants have one thing in common: a profound love for film, combined with a desire to tell stories that truly matter and can make people feel connected to one another.
I've always been fascinated by storytelling in general, and I consider myself a storyteller first and foremost. The medium is up for debate for me, but when it comes to documentary, the thing that I really am fascinated by and I'm in love with is the idea of being able to tell someone else's story and being able to bring it to people for them to connect with it and understand even just a little bit who that person is and kind of what their story is.
Back in the days when I was living in Hong Kong, I would say I was a little bit lonely, and cinema is my escape. And I watch all sorts of films, including fictions, features, documentaries, short films, whatever I can. And watching films long enough will make you start feeling like, oh, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. And then I try to step into the industry. Maybe when I make a film that can be screened on the big screen, and that will make people like me who felt lonely feel less lonely.
In the refugees, specifically because I've been working with this population for about 5 years now, and I've been listening to those stories. They're very powerful. So that's when I started writing this because I thought it was important. After writing, I was thinking about transforming this in a film. So that's when I found out about the breakthrough. And I think it's a pathway to do what I was planning.
What got me into the documentary thing is that I interview people I have a podcast where I interview a lot of different artists, and hearing their stories, I think more people should hear their stories. And then when I seen this DocFest, it's kind of like, it was meant to be, almost like it came at like the perfect time. And I thought that this program could help me get my documentary out there.
Despite the numerous challenges that exist for Indigenous and racialized creators, notably on the East Coast, most are optimistic about the power of community and of real, raw, and honest documentaries.
There's a lot more out there for Indigenous people. As being an artist for the last 20-some years, I know there's more availability in grants, and it's more favorable, especially after the Truth and Reconciliation came. I mean, there's a lot more to do with that, but I mean, yeah, we're improving.
A good documentary makes you like feel the story. You know what I mean? It's not just like seeing and knowing. It's like you connect with the characters and you connect with the overall story. So I think a good documentary has a good soul to it.
The authenticity of the story and how it connects to the community. Yeah, I want to watch a documentary and say, oh, yeah, I think I can relate with this, I understand this. This is part of what I go through every day.
As the Lunenburg DocFest celebrates the launch of Breakthrough's 4th yearly cohort, the excitement is palpable among the participants. But Lalita Krishna knows it's only the beginning of the adventure. And she looks forward to staying in touch and passing on knowledge to her mentees beyond the completion of this program.
Because unfortunately, we don't have a real path to success. There isn't one, unless you can't just take a course and then become a filmmaker tomorrow, and then that's a formula, because your next film is going to be equally challenging. How do you raise money? The business component is a whole different thing. So there are lots of tricks and tips that one has picked up along the way that you can share and say, hey, this is an easier way to do it.
Among this year's guests was Julian Carrington, the new executive director of Doc Canada, the national organization representing documentary creators. He spoke to us about his priorities for the organization and the importance of regional stories within Canada's broader documentary ecosystem.
Julian, hello.
Hello.
So you've been at the head of Doc for a few months now.
Just a few months, that's right.
How's your new gig?
So far, so good. Firstly, I felt very welcomed by the documentary community. I'm quite fortunate that in my prior roles, particularly when I was at Hot Docs, I had the opportunity to run some funding programs for filmmakers and some market programs and also some programming opportunities. I was involved in programming, and so I think many doc makers know me from that context and know that I've been a supporter of their work in different ways, and so I think I've been welcomed into this role as an ally and as a supporter, which has been great, but it's been a busy start.
So what would you say your priorities are?
So first and foremost, I'm picking up a few projects that my predecessor initiated, or a few processes that my predecessor initiated. One of those being the ongoing CRTC consultations with the implementation of the Online Streaming Act. So our priority there is to ensure that as the streamers are brought into that framework, there is funding coming in for Canadian documentary creators, and also that documentaries are discoverable to users and that they're not drowned out in a sea of content. So that's a big priority. And then actually just recently, we've launched a report with the results of a cross-country consultation. That's another project that was initiated by my predecessor. So in late 2024 and 2025, DOC National was able to visit each of DOC's 6 regional chapters to hear from grassroots creators in those regions. And we synthesized all of that input and feedback and just recently put that out in the form of a report. So those were 2 of the big tasks. And then this fall, looking forward to some strategic planning for the organization, and that'll be the first opportunity for me to really bring my new perspective and vision to the organization.
Absolutely. Plus, you're on the road.
Exactly, yes.
First time in Lunenburg.
First time in Lunenburg, first time in Atlantic Canada was at the Atlantic Film Festival just prior to this, which has been a great opportunity to meet filmmakers based in the region, connect with our local chapter representatives, and look out for the issues that are acutely important to creators based here. The festival's done a really good job of bringing some key decision makers, people from CBC, from the CMF, other governmental agencies, to meet local filmmakers here in an environment that's very intimate, very human. Sometimes at larger market events, it's difficult to get face-to-face time with these sorts of decision makers. So it's been really great to see that here at Lunenburg, people are just present, accessible.
Absolutely. You mentioned the report, Julian. I know there's a lot of key highlights in that report. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways?
Yeah, if I had to boil it down to 3, I would say there is concern among the community for the long-form documentary format in particular. There's a sense that this is a particularly important form in terms that it allows for a nuanced exploration of a topic, that it often has great sort of cultural resonance, but we're not sure that streamers and broadcasters, and streamers in particular, are prioritizing this form so much as series content. It seems like there's a pivot in that direction. So I think it's really important to recognize that we need to continue to bolster the feature format as one takeaway. I would say another takeaway is the sense that there's a gap in terms of the resources available for marketing documentaries in particular. It's always a struggle to cobble together production funds, but people are managing. But where they are feeling like there's a gap to be addressed is once those films are made, are there resources available to help them draw the audience's attention to those films?
Relates back to the discoverability aspect you were mentioning.
Very much so, very much so. And then a third major theme, fittingly here in Lunenburg, is the regional disparities in terms of access to decision makers, or even the fact that in the documentary space, provincial educational broadcasters are key players. So in Ontario, we have TVO, in British Columbia, Knowledge Network, in Quebec, Télé-Québec, but in the Atlantic region and many other parts of Canada, there isn't an equivalent body. And so how do we address that gap and ensure that creators in these regions are able to work with broadcasters that can help them build the budgets that they need to tell these stories.
So you were mentioning there that the report highlights disparities between the regions in terms of access, in terms of opportunities. What are the steps that should be taken to start to close that gap?
Well, I should say that certainly for DOC, regional inclusion and access to opportunity is already key to our mandate. So from DOC's point of view, we already have a sort of modular membership system wherein if you're based outside of a major industry center, we actually have a lower rate that recognizes that perhaps your access to resources is not as great, and that's something that we've been incorporating for some time. And of course, undertaking efforts like this to go and engage with our creators in the regions where they are, hear about their issues and challenges, and work with decision makers based in those regions. So in Halifax, just recently, we were able to hold space with folks from the NFB, from Telefilm, from CBC, and the CMF, and get into some of the takeaways from the report. But I think it's also worth considering not only regional disparities, but also class is something that we don't often talk about in the conversation around inclusion and access in Canada. And during the Toronto Film Festival, there were some delegates present from the BFI. It was actually the CMF that convened this behind closed doors conversation, which was very candid and a great space to talk about our approaches to diversity and inclusion. And in the UK, class is obviously quite a prominent feature of society. It's something that is discussed more openly. And the BFI's inclusion standards and diversity standards actually incorporate class as a dimension of inclusion. And that's something that I'm interested in exploring further in Canada because, oftentimes our industry is one that is challenging to get into if you don't have something to fall back on or familial support that you can call on, especially earlier in your career. So what sort of barriers does that raise? I think these are the questions that hopefully will also address some of the concerns or criticisms that we sometimes hear in relation to EDI work, that it's only for certain segments of society and that you don't stand to benefit if you're from a particular background. I think when we start to broaden it out into regional access and also class disparities, there are very few people actually who it wouldn't potentially encompass. So hopefully that will allow us to continue this work and broaden acceptance for its value and its necessity.
Thank you so much, Julian.
Thank you.
We also met Ariela Palke, a filmmaker whose documentaries explore social issues and collective narratives. She reflected on the role of independent documentary in fostering dialogue and capturing change at the community level.
Ariela, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for speaking to us today. So you wear many hats. You're a doc artist, you're an educator, a curator. So I'm just wondering, what first drew you to documentaries?
That's a great question, actually. It's still the same thing that is still drawing me to make documentaries and to love them. I studied philosophy for 5 years, and I feel like I'm still doing philosophy in a way. I'm still asking the same questions. I'm still looking at the same kind of issues and exploring in a very sort of similar way, but obviously with different materials and for a different audience. I think that it's just so important to be encouraging dialogue across difference, looking at our world, whether it's our immediate world or the bigger world, looking at connections, and just asking questions. I think a lot of that is what interests me. And in a way, being a documentary maker is almost like an excuse to go and talk to people that you wouldn't normally get to talk to explore topics that you wouldn't normally just, talk about at a party or wherever you are. Like, you actually get to go in and dig in deeper.
And quench that natural curiosity.
Yeah, and then share that, and then hopefully share that with audiences who then become part of that conversation, part of that dialogue, and have some impact.
Of course. So you have a very collaborative approach to your filmmaking. You sometimes co-create with other people, and the subjects of your films sometimes become co-creators as well. Why is that approach so dear to your heart?
I think when we make media, there's a definite power relationship. So if I'm framing you and holding a mic in your face and asking you questions and asking you to basically bare your soul and tell me whatever I want to know, and then I take it all away and I edit it and I sort of create my version of you or whatever the topic is, it's a huge power relationship. And I think that especially if we're making work about more marginalized people who are not generally comfortable maybe telling their stories or haven't had their stories represented, it's so important to share that power, I guess, a little bit. So to see the people in our films, I don't like the word subjects, to see the people as participants. It's like, what do you want to give? This is a relationship. I do never want to put something in the world that I've like used you for. It's very sort of, it can be very extractive. So I think that that's at the heart of why I think a collaborative approach is important. I also love working with other artists, with colleagues. I've made work with other filmmakers, as well as with the people that are in the films, who I like to see as participants, like asking, what do you want to share? What do you want to get out into the world?
It's like a mutual
It's a together project. And of course, it's still going to be like, you know, we're not pretending that everything is always going to be totally equal or whatever, but I think finding as many ways as possible to diminish that power relationship and to shift it a little bit is super important. And also in terms of money, like documentary, you know, subjects / participants, you're not supposed to pay them. Well, if you're working with, you know, people sometimes who really need the money and who are putting a lot of time into something, like why shouldn't we pay them? I will find any way possible to pay them and to find ways to, you know, have people use the camera, gather their own footage, participate in, you know, learning how to record sound or whatever, just so that we can also pay them, as well as hopefully empowering people to be part of framing their own story.
So I'm curious to know, do you think this like a distinctly feminist approach concept to your way of filmmaking?
I think that there's a lot of, yes, that collaborative approach. I mean, I would say it's feminist. I think feminism is about power and shifting power. So absolutely, yeah.
So Ariella, you've taught in the past, you're mentoring young filmmakers right now, the next generation. You keep a close relationship with them. What do you think that generation will bring to the table? What is documentary filmmaking to them, do you think?
I really hope that people continue to feel that we can tell our stories in the way that we want to, in the way that is our own creative approach, our point of view, and that we don't get molded into some kind of a format that's expected. I mean, that's fine if you're, you know, to get work, to do shows, to, you know, fulfill other people's expectations. But I don't want our voice and the next generation's voice to kind of be lost, and specifically related to the way that people want to approach the craft and the structure, the creative vision. We need to keep applying and putting in our submissions to everything, film festivals, arts councils, broadcasters, telefilm, whatever. And just because our region is quite underrepresented right now, it's very hard. There's been no like POV funding for 3 years, I think, from our region. The stats just came out again, that's through CMF. There's no regional educational broadcaster. The money from arts councils here locally is smaller. So I think it's just very difficult, especially to make a long form kind of point of view documentary is really hard. It's hard across the country. It's really hard in our region right now.
And I'm curious to hear your perspective. Why do you think the Atlantic point of view is so essential to the broader Canadian documentary scene?
Here, we have a particular voice, there's a particular culture here, there's particular ways of thinking about things, and it's not to say that everybody here thinks the same way, but I think that it's important to have a diversity of voices and approaches across the country. So I think that there's a sense that, you know, there are a lot more projects funded in the center. So in Montreal and Toronto, somewhat in BC, but less so. So I think that it's important to kind of pay attention to that and I guess acknowledge it and see what can be done to shift that change. Again, it's about the power structure, who's in the center, who's at the margins. Yeah, I think we have a lot to say. There's a lot of great people here, great artists, great storytellers, great documentary makers. So I just want to see people keep being able to make their work.
Keep fighting.
Yeah,
of course. Thank you so much, Ariella.
Thank you.
With its coastal setting, intimate atmosphere, and focus on authentic storytelling, the Lunenburg DocFest continues to build bridges between filmmakers and audiences, and to remind us why the documentary forum remains one of the most powerful ways to reflect who we are.